The first time I saw Emily, I was just a high school kid enjoying a warm spring day. Her fiery red hair caught the sunlight, and her piercing green eyes seemed to see straight through me. I was captivated. I had no way of knowing that single moment would lead to a relationship spanning decades. We became inseparable almost immediately. Those high school years were filled with late-night talks, summer jobs, and stolen moments at school dances. Emily was a force of nature, determined, headstrong, and confident in ways that left me in awe. By the time we turned 16, what started as a close friendship had grown into something deeper. We shared our dreams, our fears, and even our silliest aspirations, all while building a bond rooted in trust and mutual respect. By the time we graduated, we were already planning our future together. We wanted it all: the house, the kids, the life we had only glimpsed in movies. But even in those early days, Emily's sharp edges were evident. Her temper flared easily, and her grudges could linger like storm clouds. I learned that lesson the first time I called her Em, thinking it was a cute nickname. She immediately corrected me, making it clear she was Emily, not Amy, or anything else. I'm Liam Walker. Emily and I have been together since high school, married for 22 of the 26 years we've been a couple. She was my first girlfriend, my first kiss, and my first love. But over time, I had to learn how to navigate her moods. When she was angry, it was like standing in the middle of a wildfire. You could only hope to get out unscathed. And yet, despite everything, I loved her with all my heart. Those early years of marriage were some of the best of my life, even though we didn't have much. I worked as a mechanic while Emily held down a job at Target. We scraped by, but it didn't matter. We had each other. By the time I turned 28, a local Napa franchise owner approached me with a life-changing offer. He liked my car knowledge and how I handled customers, so he proposed training me to run my own shop. It was a handshake deal. I'd earn $40,000 a year for 10 years, while he saved $20,000 annually for my down payment. Excited, I jumped at the opportunity and gave my 2 weeks' notice. When I told Emily, I expected her to be thrilled. Instead, she was furious. She couldn't believe I'd made such a big decision without consulting her, especially since nothing was in writing. I tried to explain that this would allow me to be around more for the kids while securing a better future for all of us. But Emily wasn't having it. She ignored me for over a week, and the tension was unbearable. I threw myself into my new role, but her reaction lingered in my mind. Over the years, the deal turned out better than I'd expected. After just 2 years, I surprised Emily by finalizing the purchase, though the lack of consistent pay raises during that time led to frequent arguments. Emily struggled to trust the process, and her frustration boiled over more than once. My schedule changed to a flexible 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., which allowed me to make it to our kids' baseball, softball, and soccer games. Meanwhile, Emily went back to work shortly after the kids were born, managing an insurance office. About 2 years ago, though, something shifted. Emily's temper, which I'd always known, became sharper, cutting deeper than before. She started belittling me, tossing out jabs that stung in ways they never had. The past 3 months have been the hardest yet. Emily has been irritable, distant, and completely uninterested in talking things through. When I try to bring it up, she'd either shut me down or blow up, leaving me to feel like I was walking on eggshells. I found myself retreating into work, preferring the calm predictability of my job to the tension that hung over our home. Our business grew steadily, expanding to 4 locations. Emily was still a hard worker, managing her office with the same intensity she brought to everything she did. I told myself that her stress at work might be the reason for her worsening moods, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd either get defensive or angry, leaving me with more questions than answers. One morning, as I got ready for the day, I couldn't shake her words from earlier. "I like the way you do it." She'd said it countless times before, but this time, it felt different. There was something in her tone, a subtle shift, that unsettled me. By Friday, things came to a head. Emily came home late and demanded attention in the bedroom, her attitude sharp and entitled. "I need you to cater to me," she said, her tone clipped. I snapped. "I'm not at your beck and call. Take care of yourself." That night, I slept in my son Ryan's room, too frustrated to deal with her. The next morning, while grabbing clothes from our bedroom, I noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. A message lit up the screen. It was from someone named CB and read, "So, did he do it?" My stomach dropped as I stared at the screen. Suddenly, all of Emily's recent behavior made a sickening kind of sense. Her tone when she said, "I like the way you do it," echoed in my head. She wasn't just complimenting me. She was comparing me to someone else. I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. When Emily found me, she asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about feeling sick and needing fresh air, brushing off her concern as I grabbed my keys and left the house. I needed space to think, to breathe, and to figure out what the hell had happened to us. Driving aimlessly, my mind raced, replaying the last few months and years. The signs were all there. Emily had to be having an affair, but I needed proof. I didn't know her phone or computer passwords. We'd always trusted each other's privacy. Now, that trust felt like a joke. I couldn't stay out too long, or she'd get suspicious. After grabbing some Pepto-Bismol, Dayquil, and NyQuil from the grocery store, I went home. My stomach churned as much from betrayal as from the supposed illness I was faking. I took some Pepto and NyQuil and headed to my son's room, avoiding Emily. "Are you feeling better?" she asked, following me in. I mumbled something, undressed, and climbed into bed. When she touched my forehead and said, "You're not hot," I couldn't stop thinking, how could she do this to us? She offered to make soup, but I waved her off. "No, I'll just throw it up," I said, trying to get her to leave. "I'm going to bed. I'll feel better after some sleep." "Okay, I'll check on you later," she said before leaving. As I lay there, my mind drifted to memories of our life together. Our wedding, kids, vacations. None of it made sense. I needed proof. Later, when I got up to use the bathroom, I saw her phone on the nightstand. A message from CB lit up the screen. "I made a reservation for Wednesday afternoon." A hotel reservation? My stomach dropped. The timing wasn't coincidental. I decided right then, I'd take the afternoon off on Wednesday and follow her. The next few days were tense. I avoided her as much as possible, sticking to my plan. By Wednesday, my resolve was set. After leaving work at lunchtime, I parked near her office, keeping my distance. My stomach was in knots as I waited. Doubts crept in. Was I overthinking? Maybe it really was innocent. At 2:30, her boss left the office alone, adding to my confusion. But 15 minutes later, Emily walked out. I followed her to a motel, parking out of sight. She pulled in next to her boss's car. My heart sank as I watched her walk to a room where Jack, her boss, greeted her at the door. They smiled like teenagers, and I snapped a picture just before the door closed. It was real. My wife of 22 years was cheating on me. Furious, I drove home, trying to contain the storm raging inside me. Sophia was at softball practice, giving me time to think. Our house, with its detached garage, had always been my retreat. Years ago, I built a 2-car garage with a finished room upstairs, my man cave, or the doghouse, where I stayed after one of Emily's blow-ups. That night, I moved my clothes and toiletries into the man cave, anticipating the fight ahead. When Emily came home at 5:30, I barely acknowledged her. "Where's Sophia?" she asked. "Probably out with friends," I replied coldly. She suggested we spend the evening together, her tone hinting at what she wanted. I played along, going to the bedroom with her. But when she came out of the bathroom, I saw her differently, older, distant, like a stranger wearing her face. To cope, I closed my eyes and thought of anything but her. When I reached into the nightstand, she asked, "What are you doing?" "Putting on protection," I said calmly. The implication was clear. I didn't trust her. She exploded. "You're a failure. You haven't asked for a raise in 8 years. I've lost all respect for you." Her words cut deep, but I'd had enough. I dressed and left for the man cave, ignoring her screams to come back and face her. I called the police, knowing she'd escalate. She pounded on the garage door, shouting obscenities. Then it went quiet. The smell of smoke filled the air. When I looked outside, flames were consuming my workshop. Emily stood there, watching it burn with a smug grin. I escaped through the window, twisting my ankle in the process. Crawling away, I heard her shouting insults even as the fire roared. The police arrived just in time. One officer called for a fire truck, while another handcuffed Emily. She screamed, "Take it away, you a-holes. Your precious doghouse is burning." At the station, I gave a statement. Emily was arrested for arson and what the officer described as possible attempted liquidation. I asked about a restraining order, and the officer suggested I contact a lawyer. That night, I explained everything to Ryan and Sophia. Sophia wasn't surprised, having witnessed her mom's temper over the years. She hugged me after I apologized. Ryan was furious, but would eventually come to terms with it. The next day, I filed for divorce and secured a restraining order keeping Emily 500 feet away from me, our home, and my workplace. She posted bail, likely with Jack's help, and returned under police supervision to collect her things. Watching her pack up her life was surreal. The weekend was spent picking through the wreckage of my garage. Most of my tools were destroyed, and my diagnostic equipment was unsalvageable. To make matters worse, my insurance agent couldn't confirm coverage because Emily co-owned the property. I stood in the charred remains of my sanctuary, surrounded by ash and ruin. It was a painful reminder of what I'd lost. But for the first time in years, I felt the smallest flicker of hope. I was finally free. Reflecting on our life together, I realized the trust between Emily and me was shattered beyond repair. I couldn't stop asking myself why. Had Jack been her first affair? Was I at fault somehow? Her constant yelling suggested she'd lost respect for me. Were they mocking me behind my back? I needed answers. I looked into Jack Thompson, the man who had upended my marriage. Hired 2 years ago as general manager at Emily's company, his timeline coincided with the changes I'd noticed in her. Divorced with 3 kids, Jack lived about an hour away. I decided to call Emily's boss, someone I'd met at company events and who occasionally brought his car to my shop. I'd wait until Monday to make the call. Sunday night, Emily called, her tone unexpectedly apologetic. "I'm sorry for setting the garage on fire," she said. "So what?" I replied, emotionless. "Can I come home then?" she asked hopefully. "No. I have a restraining order," I said flatly. "Mom and Dad bailed me out." "They're not thrilled," she added. "Neither am I," I retorted. "Can we talk and work it out?" she pleaded. "No, Emily, there's nothing left to solve." "Liam, you know I love you." "It's just my temper," she insisted. "No, I don't know that you love me. If you did, you wouldn't be sleeping with your boss," I said. "That's not true," she snapped defensively. "What's not true? That I don't know if you love me, or that you're sleeping with him?" "Both," she said, her voice trembling. "Emily, I saw you with him at the motel." "Don't deny it," I accused. She gasped. "It was a mistake, a one-time thing," she claimed. "Stop lying, Emily. I'm done." I hung up and turned off my phone. Half an hour later, her father, Mr. Hartman, showed up at my door. He looked confused. "What did she tell you?" I asked. "That you had a fight and kicked her out," he replied. "How'd she explain being in jail?" "She said she was burning your repair manuals, and it got out of hand," he admitted. "Get the truth from her," I told him. "Why not tell me yourself?" he asked. "I don't think you want to hear it, Mr. Hartman," I said. "You're like a son to me," he replied. "Not for long. You'll probably hate me when you hear everything," I said. "Is it really that bad?" he asked hesitantly. I nodded, and he turned to leave. A few hours later, he texted me, "I'm sorry." She must have confessed. I imagined a blow-up at their house, possibly even a trip to confession. On Monday, I called her boss. "Liam, how are you?" he asked. "I wish this were a better call," I began. "My wife and I are divorcing because she had an affair with Jack Thompson." "Damn," he replied. "I should have trusted my instincts and vetted him more." "It's not your fault. They're adults," I said, though his regret was evident. "Liam, give me until the end of the week. I can't undo what happened, but I'll deal with this," he offered. "Sir, firing Emily will hurt me financially during the divorce. I'd appreciate it if you kept her employed," I requested. "She's done great work for me, so yes, I'll keep her," he agreed. I thanked him. Divorce papers were discreetly served to Emily at work. She called immediately, starting with, "You goddamn prick." I hung up without responding. By Friday, my revenge against Jack began. As a mechanic, I had certain skills. Jack's Lexus mysteriously broke down, leaving him late for work. When he finally arrived, Emily's boss fired him for unbecoming behavior. Emily called me again. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied coolly. "You know exactly what I mean," she snapped. "Talk to the lawyers, Emily. Don't call me again." I hung up and ignored her repeated attempts to reach me. But I wasn't done with Jack. I reached out to his ex-wife, Hannah, explaining my situation. She was eager to help. On Saturday, I invited her to join me and my kids at our favorite restaurant. When Hannah arrived, Ryan and Sophia were surprised. "This is Hannah," I explained, Jack Thompson's ex-wife. She wanted to share her story. Over dinner, Hannah recounted her experience, Jack's infidelity, her forgiveness, and how he betrayed her trust again. She emphasized the importance of trust in a relationship and how its absence makes everything crumble. She helped my kids understand that my decision to divorce wasn't about a lack of love, but about a broken foundation. By the end of the meal, we were talking openly. Sophia admitted she'd suspected something was wrong for a year. After dinner, she asked if I was heading home. "I'm asking Hannah to the dance if she's up for it," I replied. Hannah nodded, and we spent the evening dancing until 11 p.m. I drove her to her hotel but declined her invitation to come up, feeling it was too soon. We agreed to meet for breakfast the next day. At breakfast, the waitress, Heather, was visibly surprised to see me with someone other than Emily. "This is Hannah," I said, introducing her. Knowing how fast gossip spreads, I figured Emily would find out soon enough. Hannah and I spent the rest of the day together before she left, leaving me with a sense of closure I hadn't felt in years. Hannah told me to reach out if I wanted to spend more time together. Word quickly spread, and Emily found out. She called, furious, accusing me of seeing other women. "We're getting a divorce," I told her bluntly. "Your actions won't change that." After a conversation with her father, she finally signed the papers. At Sophia's graduation, I saw Emily for the first time since the split. She looked older, thinner. Her first words were an accusation, asking if I was seeing Jack's ex. "Hannah's an amazing woman," I replied. When I asked where Jack was, she said he'd been fired and moved out of state. I told her, "You didn't love me enough," and walked away. Behind me, I heard her break down, with her mother calling me an a-hole. The following Saturday, Sophia's open house was held at our home. Emily and I had agreed to host it there despite the divorce. I lifted the restraining order temporarily to let her handle the arrangements, but it was tough seeing her in familiar spaces. As Hannah had said, I still loved her despite everything. That night, after Sophia left with friends, Emily approached me while I was taking out the trash. "Thank you for having the open house here and letting me be part of it," she said. "You'll always be her mother," I replied, continuing with the trash. "Liam, can you look at me?" she asked. I stopped and turned to face her. "I'm sorry for what I did to us," she said, tears welling up. "Why did you do it?" I asked. She broke down crying and ran from the room, unable to answer. Months passed as the divorce finalized. Sophia received her college acceptance letter, and we took out a second mortgage to help with her tuition and Ryan's auto repair shop. When the house sold, Emily and I split the remaining equity. There was no alimony since we earned about the same. Emily pleaded guilty to arson, receiving 2 years probation, anger management, and therapy. After the divorce was finalized, Emily asked to meet. We met at a restaurant we used to frequent. She looked better, though nervous. During dinner, she apologized again, saying she had lost respect for me, seeing Jack as ambitious while I seemed stagnant. But now, she realized the sacrifices I'd made for our family and regretted everything. "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't live up to your expectations." We parted with a hug, and she offered to be there if I ever needed to talk. I doubted I'd take her up on it. On the drive home, I called Hannah. "Are you still available?" I asked. "I'm available," she replied, her tone warm. "When can we meet?" "Your place or mine?" she asked. "Yours," I replied. That night, We had dinner at her house. Afterward, I told her honestly, Hannah, I really like you. I don't know where this is going, but I want you to know two things. First, you're an incredible woman. Second, part of me wants revenge. You're my first since my wife cheated. I respect you and don't want you to feel used. Liam, she said with a smile, I want you too. And honestly, part of me wants revenge as well. I never got back at Jack's other women. Let's even the score. With that, we went to the bedroom. Later, as we lay together, I reflected on my relationship with Emily. Her temper, which had started as a small issue, worsened over the years. She would lash out verbally and sometimes physically. I always retreated, believing it was better not to fight back, but I think she saw that as weakness. When she set fire to my garage, I knew I couldn't stay. The fear of waking up one night with a knife in my chest sealed my decision to leave. Hannah was incredible, but I knew we couldn't build a real relationship on revenge and shared animosity. Still, she was exactly what I needed in that moment. As I got dressed, she kissed me goodbye. I hope this continues, she said. Me too, I replied honestly. But I'm not ready for anything serious. Before I left, I asked hesitantly, can you make sure Jack hears about us? I'll do the same. That sounds delightful, she said with a sly smile. That night, I texted Emily, call me when you have time. Monday's fine, nothing urgent. She called immediately. Are you taking me up on my offer? She asked. No, I'm exhausted. Hannah's very energetic, I replied. There was silence on the other end before I heard her counting to 10. You could have waited until Monday, she said tightly. I texted, not called, I replied calmly. Let me know Sophia's plans, okay? Fine, she said, clearly restraining herself. A week later, Jack showed up at my door, pounding on it. I called 911 before opening. Stay away from my wife, he bellowed. You mean your ex-wife? I replied. She kicked you out for cheating. Stay away from Hannah, he shouted. Why should I? She's amazing, I taunted. He lunged at me, swinging wildly. I blocked the first punch but let the second land. It didn't hurt much, but it would show him the consequences of his anger. A mechanic tends to be in better shape than an office worker. By the time the police arrived, Jack was subdued, and I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I deflected Jack's first wild swing but let the second punch land. It didn't hurt much, but I wanted him to feel like he'd accomplished something before he was hauled away. Mechanics are generally in better shape than office workers, and it showed. By the time the police arrived, we were both bruised, but Jack looked far worse. The officers separated us, confirmed I'd made the call, and put Jack in the back of a patrol car. As they sorted the situation, I headed inside to clean myself up, my anger barely simmering down. Once I felt steady, I called Hannah to let her know what had happened. I know, she said. He had the audacity to ask me to bail him out. Can you believe that? Not really, but it sounds like him, I replied, shaking my head. Are you okay? She asked, concern lacing her voice. Just a little bruised, but I'll live. He definitely got the worst of it, I reassured her. I'm coming over, she said firmly. You need a nurse. An hour later, she was at my place, tending to my bruises with a mix of gentleness and teasing. Her presence made the chaos of the day fade into the background. Before leaving, she smiled slyly and said, I love the way you do it. Your tongue and fingers are magical. Her words lingered, and I realized I needed to have a serious conversation with her soon. What we had was fun, but I couldn't ignore the weight of everything I was carrying. The next day during my lunch break, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. What did you do? She asked sharply. Well, hi to you too, I said dryly. Hi. Now, what did you do? I'm not sure what you're talking about, I replied, playing dumb. You arrested Jack. No, he arrested himself. I shot back calmly. That's not what he said, she countered, her voice growing more heated. So you're taking his word over mine? Sounds about right, I said sarcastically. Whatever you think, that's over. I haven't been with him for over a month. Says you. I teased. Why do you have to be such a bum? She snapped. Good teacher, I replied, my patience wearing thin. Are you going to drop the charges? She asked, her tone shifting to pleading. Why would I? He broke into my place and attacked me. Because he'll lose his job. And because I'm asking you to, she said, her voice softer. You're not my wife anymore. I don't have to do what you say, I replied firmly before hanging up. Months after their affair had supposedly ended, she was still trying to help him. It baffled me. Jack was ultimately charged with assault and battery and would likely serve at least 90 days in jail. He was guaranteed to lose his job, and when I heard that, I couldn't help but smile. That Thursday, I found myself back at Smitty's, the old bar I used to visit during better times. Sometimes familiar places help ground you when life feels overwhelming. As I sipped my beer, I heard a familiar laugh. Emily. She was sitting with her office friends. She spotted me, froze briefly, then said something to her group before sitting at a table far from mine. They had to pass by my table to reach the restroom, though, so I knew it wouldn't be long before someone approached. Sure enough, after 10 minutes, 2 women walked by, and one stopped at my table. You're Emily's ex, right? She asked with a knowing smile. I am, I replied cautiously, unsure where this was going. I've heard a lot about you, she said playfully. Her tone left me wondering if what she'd heard was good or bad, but before I could respond, she and her friend disappeared into the restroom. On their way back, both stopped to chat, their flirting unmistakable. One was about 10 years younger than me, the other closer to 15. Unlike men, these women didn't seem to mind chatting up a friend's ex. I flirted back, knowing it would irritate Emily. Yes, it was vindictive, but I didn't care. As they left, one of them slipped me her business card, Laura Pierce. From the corner of my eye, I saw Emily watching, her expression shifting from sadness to the familiar fury I knew all too well. I finished my beer, tossed the $10 on the table, and walked out before she could say anything. The tears forming in my eyes told me I wasn't as indifferent as I wanted to be. The next morning, I called Laura. Hello? She answered, her voice uncertain. Hi, Laura. This is Liam. We met at Smitty's Thursday night, I said. Oh, yes. The handsome man sitting alone with a beer, she said warmly. Her directness caught me off guard, but I replied, That's me. Would you like to meet up again? How about tonight? She suggested. Smitty's at 7:30? I offered. Perfect, she replied. That evening, I dressed in business casual, feeling nervous about dating again after 25 years. Laura was as charming as I remembered. Once we'd settled into our conversation, I asked the question that had been bothering me. You work with my ex. Why would you want to date me? I'm sure you've heard plenty of bad things. She laughed. Before Emily got involved with Jack, she said things about you that intrigued me. The affair probably started 3 months before you filed for divorce, but I'd been curious about you long before that. What kind of things? I asked hesitantly. She mentioned, during some bachelorette parties, how pleased she was with your performance, Laura said with a mischievous smile. I blushed, completely caught off guard. Don't be embarrassed, she said. If you're as good as she claimed, this could be a very pleasant adventure. By the end of the evening, I felt lighter than I had in months. As I paid the bill, the waitress joked about a possible prize if I kept the check, and Laura smiled knowingly. Walking her to her car, I felt a spark of hope for the first time in a long while. I looked at Laura, puzzled. She winked and gestured toward the check. As I slipped it into my pocket, I couldn't help but smile at her boldness. When we stepped outside, she softly said, Now for dessert. Her directness took me by surprise. It had been a long time since I'd gone on a date, let alone one that moved this quickly. Your place or mine? She asked, her tone playful. I'll let you decide, I replied cautiously. I want you to feel comfortable, she said with a smile. Let's go to your place. You can tell a lot about a person by seeing how they live. She hopped into my truck, which meant I'd have to drive her back for her car later. Are you sure your car will be safe here for the night? I asked. Yes, she said confidently. I took an Uber here just in case. Once again, I felt out of touch with the way people approach dating these days. When we got to my place, things escalated quickly. We rushed to the bedroom, the tension between us exploding into passion. The next morning, we slept in until 10 a.m. and grabbed lunch at Chili's before I drove her home. She made me promise to call her for a repeat. I assured her I would. On my way back, I remembered the check from Smitty's tucked into my wallet. The waitress had written her name and number on it, a subtle invitation. This new reality of dating was going to take some getting used to. On Monday after work, I went back to Smitty's, curious about the waitress, Grace. She was closer to my age, and we struck up an easy conversation. I asked her out, and since weekends were busy for her, we scheduled a Wednesday night date, her day off. As I walked to my truck, my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. "Hello?" I said. "Hi, Liam, this is Madison. We met last Thursday night at Smitty's with Laura." "Oh, yes, I remember," I said, a little surprised. "Laura said she had a great time with you Saturday night. I was wondering if we could go out sometime." "Aren't I a little old for you?" I asked, caught off guard. "Not at all. I prefer older guys. They're more mature and easier to get along with," she replied confidently. "Well, sure. How about Saturday night?" I suggested. "That sounds great. I'll let you pick the place," she said, her voice light and cheerful. Madison turned out to be as flexible as her schedule. Our date was adventurous, exploring parts of myself I hadn't considered in years. My Wednesday evening with Grace was equally enjoyable. Like Laura and Hannah before her, Grace echoed a familiar sentiment. "I like the way you do it." By Sunday, Hannah invited me over for a home-cooked dinner. The meal was incredible, and the company even better. Single life was starting to feel like a welcome change. But Monday night brought a storm in the form of Emily's angry call. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she snapped. "Sitting here watching TV," I replied, feigning innocence. "No, I mean dating women 10 and 15 years younger than you. Don't you have any shame?" "You must mean Laura and Madison," I said, keeping my tone light. "Yes, of course," she confirmed, her frustration palpable. "They asked me out. Instead of being alone, I said yes. Dating has changed. It's nice not having to face rejection and feeling appreciated for a change," I explained calmly. "Well then, stop dating the people I work with," she demanded. "Why would I do that?" "Because I said so. I don't have to do what you say anymore. We're not married. I'll date whoever I choose," I replied firmly. "You're only doing this to make my life harder," she accused. "No, but if it does, that's a bonus. How does my dating them affect you?" They whisper behind my back, saying, "I can't believe she let him go." "They're basically calling me an idiot," she exclaimed. "Well, I thought if the shoe fits. But instead, I said, I'll ask them to keep our activities private. Will that help?" "No, just stop seeing them," she demanded again. "That I won't do, unless they choose to stop. I enjoy their company. They make me feel young and boost my ego," I said matter-of-factly. "You're an a-hole," she said, slamming the phone down. Despite her anger, I smiled. These women had done wonders for my confidence. By Wednesday, I had another enjoyable date with Grace. Life was starting to feel fulfilling in ways I hadn't expected. But on Thursday, Emily called again. I sighed before answering. "Yes, Emily? What now?" I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I haven't met Laura or Madison yet, but the waitress at Smitty's too? At least she's more age-appropriate," she said sarcastically. "I thought you didn't want me dating younger women," I replied. "I don't want you dating at all," she exclaimed. "Everyone keeps asking why I let you go, and I don't have an answer. Tell them someone else was more your style. More in line with your aspirations," I suggested. There was a pause, then in a quiet voice she said, "I'll just tell them I was stupid." She hung up without another word. Sitting there, I reflected on my life. Emily and I had some incredible times, but she'd started drifting away long before Jack entered the picture. Maybe she'd lost interest in me years ago. Now, at least, she seemed remorseful, but it was too late. The past couldn't be rewritten, and I couldn't move forward with her anymore. Feeling a wave of sadness, I decided to head to the store for a case of Shiner Bock. As I was leaving, Laura called. "What's up?" she asked. "I just bought some beer to drown my sorrows," I admitted. "Can I help with that?" "I'll try to cheer you up," she offered. "Sure, you might be just what the doctor ordered," I said, managing a small smile. We drank together, and Laura once again expressed her pleasure in ways that reminded me of how far I'd come since Emily. Around 2 a.m., Laura sighed and said, I have to work tomorrow, so I'd better get going. Oh, and thanks for mentioning something to Emily. But if you could keep tonight to yourself, I'd appreciate it, I replied with a small smile. Of course, she said, slipping on her shoes. Emily seemed a bit down earlier, but it's still hard to believe she let you go. Thank you, I said sincerely. You've successfully lifted my spirits tonight. Anytime, she replied, leaning in for a kiss. And I mean anytime. Over the next year, my so-called friends with benefits circle grew. Laura, Madison, Hannah, and Grace each had their time with me, and none seemed disappointed. They all knew about my abilities and took turns enjoying them, often repeating the same phrase. I like the way you do it. I wasn't one to turn them down, and I found pleasure in each connection. Emily wasn't thrilled when she learned about my escapades, calling me a strumpet. I didn't care. Pleasing women was something I enjoyed, and it wasn't her concern anymore. Eventually, she got used to hearing about me with other women. One day at Smitty's, she approached me with a bold proposition. You know, we were good together. Why not for old time's sake? She asked. I shook my head. It wouldn't be the same. Back then, everything I did for you was out of love. Now, it would just be us using each other. I understand, she said softly, sorrow in her eyes as she returned to her table. Life continued moving forward. Finally, the day came when I was awarded the Napa franchise. The owner stayed true to his word, offering me a fair buyout for the business. I had to take out a loan, but the franchise was profitable, and I wasn't worried about repayment. That evening, I called Emily and invited her to dinner. She sounded surprised but agreed. I made reservations at the best restaurant in town, arranged for a car to pick her up, and told her to dress appropriately. When she arrived, she looked stunning in a long black dress that accentuated her red hair and green eyes. For a moment, I remembered why I had fallen for her all those years ago. You look amazing, Emily, I said. Thank you, she replied, her eyes lighting up. You look very handsome in that tuxedo. What's the occasion? I'm celebrating, and I wanted you to be the first to know, I said. Now I'm curious, she replied, a playful tone in her voice. Let's enjoy dinner first, I suggested. The meal was excellent, and our conversation became more substantial than it had been in years. As we reached dessert, she couldn't wait any longer. So, what are we celebrating? She asked. Emily, after we married, I worked hard as a mechanic, trying to provide for our family. I felt stuck, but you seemed happy, until I told you about the Napa job. Then, you blew up, I began. She lowered her gaze, shame flickering across her face. I remember, she said softly. I did it for us, for our family, I continued. Everything I did was to make our lives better. And I ruined it all, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't bring you here to relive bad memories, I said gently. I wanted you to know I signed the paperwork today. I now own a Napa franchise with 4 stores. Her eyes widened in shock. Liam, that's incredible. This ensures our children will have a significant inheritance. They can either run the business or sell it. Our grandchildren will benefit too. That's all I ever wanted, to give them a better life. Tears streamed down her face. I listened to Jack when he called you a failure with no ambition. I lost faith in you. And I ruined everything, she said, her voice breaking. You were a great husband, father, and lover, and I threw it all away. I'm so sorry, Liam. I hope you believe me. She stood abruptly, tears falling as she rushed toward the bathroom. A server discreetly followed her. I hadn't expected my news to affect her so deeply. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, but instead, it stirred up pain neither of us could ignore. When she returned, her eyes were red and puffy. I stood and said gently, I've already paid the bill. Let me take you home. Thank you, she whispered. I'm sorry I ruined your evening. She cried quietly during the car ride home. I wanted to hug her, to offer comfort, but I couldn't risk sending the wrong message. At her apartment door, she turned to me, her expression hopeful. I'm sorry, Emily, but we can't go back there, I said firmly. She nodded sadly and closed the door behind her. The next couple of years were a whirlwind of business and personal life. The Napa franchise flourished, and my reputation with women grew. Word of mouth was, apparently, excellent advertising, but I always practiced safety. Emily and I occasionally spoke, usually about the kids. Ryan's engagement was a major milestone. He met Chloe Bennett through his store, and they quickly became inseparable. At the engagement party, I arrived early to help Ryan set up. We rented a room at the Sheraton and brought in sandwiches from Subway to keep it simple. Emily arrived a bit later, still striking after all these years. "We never had an engagement party," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "No, but everyone we knew us," I replied. "Do you remember how you proposed?" she asked softly. "Yes, I do," I said, memories flooding back. "Sometimes I wish we could move on from all the pain," she said. "It's been 3 years, Emily," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Today is about Ryan and Chloe. Let's focus on them." "Maybe we could be cordial from now on," she suggested, her usual commanding tone slipping through. "Maybe," I said, letting the word hang in the air. As guests arrived, I heard Chloe call, "Mom." I turned and saw a beautiful woman in a floral sundress with blonde hair, deep blue eyes, and a radiant smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Dad, that's Chloe's mom, Rachel," Ryan said quietly, leaning in. "She's very religious and not into your lifestyle." I chuckled, already intrigued. "Ryan, before your mother left, I was a one-woman man," I said, my voice firm. "I want someone I can trust. I don't know if she'd give you a chance, but I'll introduce you," he offered. "That would be great," I replied. Ryan led me to Chloe and her mother, Rachel. "Mrs. Bennett, this is my father, Liam," he said. Ryan's future mother-in-law smiled warmly. "Ryan, you can call me Mom now," Rachel said. Emily, who had walked up behind us, added sharply, "As long as he doesn't forget who his real mother is." Ryan quickly introduced Emily to Rachel. They hugged politely and began talking, leaving me to step away. I wanted my first conversation with Rachel to leave a good impression, and Emily hovering nearby would only complicate things. I mingled with friends and family, chatting about the engagement. Many of the men teased me about my reputation with women, while some of the women were aloof. Others, like Vanessa, a divorced woman I struck up a conversation with, were friendly. Emily, of course, couldn't resist interrupting. She approached us with a smirk. "You'd better be careful with him," she warned Vanessa. "You never know what you might pick up." Her remark made my blood boil. "Don't mind her," I said to Vanessa. "She's just mad I'm not giving her any mercy." "Liam, you're a creep," Emily shot back. "You're the one interfering in my conversations," I retorted. "Let's just be polite and keep our distance." Turning to Vanessa, I added, "Want to take a walk and talk privately?" Vanessa agreed, and we stepped outside to chat away from the drama. I didn't plan on pursuing anything with her that day, but it annoyed Emily enough to satisfy me. About 2 hours into the party, I finally introduced myself to Rachel. "So you're the infamous Liam," she said, her tone cool and slightly disapproving. "I don't know what you've heard, but yes, I'm Ryan's father," I replied, trying to sound composed. "Ryan seems like a fine young man." "I hope he doesn't offend my Chloe," she said pointedly. "He's a great kid," I said, pride in my voice. "He knows what he wants and works hard for it. He'll build his business and love Chloe just as much." "Well, I hope he stays faithful," she said bluntly. "He will. You have nothing to worry about," I assured her. "For Chloe's sake, I hope so," she replied, still guarded. "It's going to be a church wedding, promises made before God and family." "Of course," I said. "It sounds like you've heard some things about me. I'd like to clear the air if you'd let me." She hesitated. "I've heard a lot, but we're going to be family. I think we should talk." "I agree," I said. "Pick a time and place, and I'll make it work." "Well, I live about an hour away. Tomorrow is Sunday, and I'll be at church. Pick me up after, and we can go to Cracker Barrel," she said. For the rest of the party, we exchanged subtle glances. She seemed intrigued but cautious, and I couldn't blame her. As the evening wound down, Emily approached me. "Chloe's cute, but they're moving fast. Did you know they plan to marry within a year?" "Ryan's smart. He knows what he wants," I said. "Meeting and marrying quickly can create problems, but we knew each other for years and still divorced. Their success depends on their commitment." She looked regretful, and I could see she was reflecting on how she'd broken ours. It still hurt, but I needed her to remember that. The next morning, I woke early, shaved, showered, and put on a suit. I wanted to make a good impression at Rachel's church. When I arrived, I found a seat near the back. It was nothing like the Catholic church of my youth. No stained glass, no altar, just a simple platform and cross. I felt out of place among the casually dressed congregation, but the warm greetings made me feel welcome. I scanned the room nervously, wondering if I had the right details. Then I saw Rachel singing with the praise band. She noticed me during the third song and smiled, her voice clear and beautiful. After the music ended, she joined me, sitting down with an easy grace. "I didn't expect you to come to the service," she said. "I feel a bit overdressed," I admitted, glancing around. "That's okay. Take off your jacket if it makes you more comfortable," she suggested. I did, laying it on the pew. "Thanks for sitting with me," I said. "You're my guest." "Of course I would," she replied warmly. The service was unlike anything I'd experienced, relaxed but meaningful. Afterward, Rachel introduced me to the minister and a few others as Chloe's future father-in-law, which made me smile. At Cracker Barrel, we started with light conversation, but as we finished our meal, Rachel's tone grew serious. "So, Liam, I've heard you're a womanizer and sleep around a lot. What do you have to say to that?" she asked directly. "What's your definition of a womanizer?" I countered. "A guy who chases women, sleeps with them, and dumps them," she replied bluntly. "By that definition, I'm not a womanizer," I said firmly. "So what I've been told is a lie?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Let me explain," I began. "I was married to Emily, the woman you met at the engagement party," I began, meeting Rachel's curious gaze. "We were together for over 25 years. She started cheating on me with her boss, and when I confronted her, she tried to eliminate me by setting my garage on fire." Rachel's eyes widened in shock, but she said nothing, letting me continue. "After our divorce, I started dating. Emily likely talked about my abilities in the bedroom because women began approaching me out of curiosity. I didn't chase them. I just said yes. For the past 2 years, I haven't turned down any woman who asked me out. I enjoyed their company and made it my goal to make them feel special. If you think that's wrong, I'm sorry." She studied me with a mixture of suspicion and intrigue. "So, where do I fit into all this?" she asked. "Rachel, you're a beautiful woman," I replied. "Like me, you've suffered. While I sought companionship, you shut yourself off from men because of what your husband did to you. I'm looking for someone who wants to know the real me. Maybe we could date. Maybe more." "What about your ex-wife?" she asked cautiously. "Didn't she want to get back together?" "Forgiving is one thing, but forgetting is another," I said firmly. "You can't forget what someone did to you. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and without it, there's nothing." "I understand," she said softly. "My ex wanted me to look past everything and stay married, but I couldn't. My self-esteem took a huge hit, and I swore I wouldn't let anyone hurt me like that again." "We're similar in that way," I said. "I've spent time with women, but I've never let anyone get emotionally close to me since my divorce." She nodded thoughtfully. "So where am I in all this?" she asked again. "Well, we both have trust issues," I admitted. "But I'd like to get to know you better and see if there's a future for us." "What about the other women?" she pressed. "If I feel there's real potential between us, I'd be happy to be exclusive with you," I replied honestly. Her gaze steadied on mine. "Let me be upfront. I'm not doing anything until I'm married. If we're going to date, you need to understand that." I grinned. "Rachel, I dated Emily in high school and waited until we were married. I'm fine with waiting." She seemed reassured. "Liam, I appreciate your honesty. I think I like you. Let's see where this goes." For the next 4 months, we saw each other twice a week. Sometimes she came to my place. Other times, I went to hers. During that time, I continued seeing other women, but my interest in them dwindled. Even Vanessa, who once boosted my ego with endless compliments, started to feel like an annoyance. One night over dinner, Rachel surprised me by saying, "I'm ready to commit." My heart soared. "That makes me the happiest man alive," I said. I'm committing myself only to you. Honestly, the last 4 months have been meaningless when I wasn't with you. I love you, Rachel. She hesitated but finally said, I think I'm falling in love with you too. Please be patient with me. I promised her patience in every way. Then, one day, Emily called unexpectedly. Hi, Liam, she said. Hi, Emily. How are you? What can I do for you? I asked, my mood light. Wow, you're in a good mood, she noted. Yes, I am. So, what do you need? I asked cheerfully. Why don't we have dinner sometime? I have something to discuss with you. Sure, how about tonight? I offered. That would be great. I'll make your favorite, roast beef with vegetables. Can you come over around 7? Don't you want to go out to eat? I asked, surprised. No, I'd like us to be alone, she insisted. Okay, do you need anything? Maybe some wine to go with the roast beef? Got it. See you tonight, I said. Hanging up, curious, I called Rachel to let her know. She probably wants to talk about Ryan's wedding, Rachel said. She's trying to soften me up with roast beef, I joked. Call me afterward and let me know, she replied. At 7 o'clock, I arrived at Emily's door, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and unease. Dinner was pleasant, and we chatted lightly until she revealed the real reason for the invitation. Liam, Ryan's wedding has made me think about us, she said quietly. There is no us, Emily, I said. Ignoring me, she continued. Remember when we used to date and fool around? Yes, we were young, I replied. We were good together, weren't we? Yes, we were, I agreed. What happened to us? She asked. Life, I said simply. She leaned in. Maybe we should try again. You know we were good together. Emily, we were good together. But the key word is were, I said softly. I've forgiven you, but I can never forget what you did. You need to move on with your life. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh, Liam, I'm so sorry for what I did to you, to us. I know we can get over it. Let's try again. I love someone else, Emily, I said firmly. Madison was right. I'm no longer playing around because I'm committed to someone. I'm a one-woman man again. Her shoulders slumped as the realization hit her. Who is it? She asked, her voice barely audible. Rachel, Chloe's mom, I replied. Her face fell. She knew she had no chance. We finished dinner in silence. As I left, I said, Emily, thank you for dinner and the memories. I know this isn't what you wanted, but you'll find someone. Love him with all your heart. Driving away, I felt a sense of closure. Rachel had helped me forgive Emily, just as she forgave her ex. Their actions had brought us together. When I called Rachel, she asked, So, what was it? She wanted us to get back together, I said. I thought so. She knows what she lost. Yeah, and I know what I found. Rachel, I love you, and I'm better for it. I love you too, Liam Walker, she said. It was the first time she said it out loud, and hearing it filled me with joy. Ryan and Chloe's wedding was beautiful. Rachel and I held hands, danced all night, and some joked that we looked like the bride and groom. Emily left early, unable to bear seeing us so happy. 3 months later, Rachel and I had a small, private ceremony at our church. Emily didn't attend, citing a scheduling conflict, but I suspected she simply couldn't handle it. On our wedding night, Rachel whispered the words that brought everything full circle. I love the way you do it. This time, the emphasis was on love.